before coming, I always prefer to have a smaller room, actually, because that's the biggest catastrophe for a speaker is to have 1,000 people room and just 100 people, whereas a 50 people room with 100 people is the best thing which may happen to a speaker. Nonetheless, let me start. Today I will talk to you not about Java, though there is very related to Java developers and other types of developers, but generally about colonialism. And when GeeCON organizers asked me to use this slide as an introductory slide, I was actually quite surprised. Is it smog in Krakow? I mean, I haven't been this winter. It looks like smog for me. If it's smog, then great. I would say that Spartus, the company I co-founded, could have been a sponsor of smog, because this year, effectively, we have seen a lot of people finally willing to move from Krakow to the cleaner places. So thanks, smog, for just kidding. Okay, shortly about me. I'm a co-founder of Spartus. For last 10 years, we started as a small company, and now more about 100 people. We have various tools for agile teams, integration tools, but also for many, many years I've been very tightly involved in building a tool probably many of you know, which is called Jira. So for like last 8 years, I'm one of the men behind Jira. We work with Atlassian closely. Okay, so before I start, let me ask you a few questions, so please raise your hand. The first question is, who works in Poland or Central Eastern Europe here? So could you please raise your hand? Okay, so that will be then the very well targeted talk. So vast majority of people are from the region. Cool, because I will be talking about something which may be not so obvious for Americans or Australians or Swedish people, but for people in CE it is. The other question, who is working in a company with headquarters elsewhere, usually on the west? Anyone? Okay, so about half. And who has a chance to frequently talk to the end user or customer? Okay, 3%. Okay, cool. So it looks like the target is just perfect. Okay, let us talk briefly about the history. Poland, and it applies also to Ukraine. In the past, Poland was a granary for Europe. It was before the even new world, so America, so Australia was even found or discovered. We were great in woods, crops, coal and iron. I mean, coal and iron, even nowadays, we are still at least pretending we are great at coal. But if we look now at 21st century, what we are great at is really we provide human resources. We provide human resources, Ukraine and other neighboring countries, we provide human resources which are perfect to build various types of outsourcing services around accounting, HR, payroll, or IT. IT is also in this group. And as IT professionals, we sometimes laugh at, these guys working financial outsourcing centers on HR outsourcing services, but in fact, I dare say that we are quite similar, despite I'm an IT guy, and it's tough to say that. So first of all, any kind of outsourcing in IT concentrates on providing development services like development, testing, coding, UI design, technical support, release, and so on. But outsourcing companies don't need to think about end users, really, their real problems and the real solutions they should have, the business risk, feature validation, things like that. And actually, outsourcing companies are proud of not being worried about this, because that would increase their own risk. If an outsourcing company has to also cope with a risk of the company which orders software, that's actually a painful thing. So we end up with so the fact is that we specialize highly, and a picture like with this ship, that's sometimes reality. And we have to face one fact, that in 21st century, software development quickly becomes commodity. To give you an example, and for the next few minutes, I will try to prove that I'm right. Nowadays, like maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, one needed to have 5 years of university with engineering degree, some University of Technology or something similar. Usually a lot of time spent on at home, coding and playing with the various technologies to build some software. Nowadays, there are companies which offer transformation of any human resource into a programmer from 3 to 6 months. And actually, I know there are plenty of such companies in Poland. And last year there were like at least 5. This year, I think 20. 3 years ago, the first one arrived. And companies, especially outsourcing companies, are ordering these guys in batches, like really in kilograms. Like, give me 5 tons of developers. And we, these guys who are here, we come to conferences, are horrified. How come, these guys are invading our territory and they are unskilled, they are unprofessional, they will destroy the software, the source code we are building. And well, I'm not really that sure, because what I see in Kraków, in Gdańsk, in Warsaw, majority of students nowadays of IT courses, like the computer science courses, start their job often full-time on the second year, or even sometimes on first year. So when they start really working professionally, they have almost zero experience. So they are really comparable to these guys who are trained within 3 or 6 months on an order by an outsourcing company. And also, I often hear from every student, we are taught such shitty, unnecessary things. So, if you are taught for a year shitty, unnecessary things, and then you consider yourself to be ready to start your journey as a professional, how is it better to a person who has a targeted course on, say, using Java or Angular with Hibernate, with Spring Boot to build, a web service or a service? I would say that probably the other is actually better for a company who can have a well-shaped person, well-shaped resource they can sell to a company from abroad. So all in all, the landscape starts to resembling a colony where us, devs, maybe are not sugarcane pickers, harvesters, but we code. The problem with colony is that being cheap isn't something sustainable. I mean, first rule, there will be always someone cheaper, and some economies in Central Europe already know it because their companies are moving the workforce farther to the east. I think that Africa will come next. And automation comes, right? So automation makes basically things where today people are needed, not necessary anymore in the future. And I think that mass production showed it, that even the cheapest human are still too expensive and too problematic. These uprisals, riots, suicides in China. These are, PR, it's really bad for PR. Bots, robots are better, right? And ultimately, colonies are sooner or later devastated, resources are drained. Suicides, well, these resources. And it's always possible to move, to a cheaper country. So let us ask ourselves a question. We are living in these crazy times where we say software is eating the world, and software is everywhere. Software is in the car, on the space station, in the. My TV has Linux on board. Once I saw it crash during the boot, and I saw the core dumped from the Linux. So it's everywhere, right? And does it mean it will last forever, and we'll have this guarantee that as a profession we'll have a demand for our job always, all the time? I would like to challenge that. First of all, as I mentioned, there are more and more professionals built or made every year. It's not just those 3 to 6 months long courses which are making new professionals, but also basically the market doesn't accept the imbalance between supply and demand, and it more or less starts to even. So tons of people actually now pick IT as their master course. A lot of people, I know a lot, who finish different technical faculties like geodesy or math or construction, and they are requalifying themselves quickly in a year or 2 max into IT, right? So that's other thing. Third thing, which is very important, is that really writing software nowadays, like coding software for money, is way, way easier than it was 20 or 30 years ago. When a person, in order to write something, then we had C, assembler, and basically for general purpose languages, assembler was a general purpose language, right? And people had to know memory, CPUs, algorithms, I mean, people had to actually, devise algorithms for sorting even. And I just wonder, now a quick show of your hands, who for last 15 years, I'm not sure, maybe there are no people who have been here for 15 years in the profession, have been working, who of you has been working on a non-trivial algorithm which required really your high degree, I mean uni degree in math or artificial intelligence? Like, raise your hand, please. In last 15 years. Okay. Shit, it's just 50%. I wanted to ask more questions, like last 5 years. I'm not, I 15 years, okay, 3 people. And in last year, 4 people. Awesome, 4 people out of like 300 here, maybe in this room. So that proves the point that it's really like the skills which were needed and which we have been mastering for years, 15, 20 years ago, are not really needed anymore, because nowadays the profession of the developer more and more resembles a person who can Google for an answer and copy and paste answers from Stack Overflow, more or less. This is 90% of the job, and control space or command space in IntelliJ is the remaining 10. More or less. And in the past, we had similar situations where a lot of professions claim that they are awesome, they are irreplaceable, they will last forever. We had miners. Miners, when the industry, like the industrial revolution 200 years ago started, miners were sure that, to really mine coal or iron, it's the perfect job for your kid. Bunkers. Awesome. Like bunkers, skilling up someone for bunker is a guarantee for millions, and nowadays for unemployment, if you look at what America does and how our banks fire and sometimes hire again people. English teachers. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, being an English teacher in Poland, a qualified English teacher, was a gold mine. Nowadays, knowing English is not a rather skill, lack of knowing English is a disaster. It's being like a handicapped person who needs to have a special care. Lawyers, another thing. Lawyers, 10 years ago, to be a lawyer, with the protected access to the job, was awesome. Nowadays, lawyers apply to as interns to our company, dreaming about, being paid 3,000 or 4,000 as a coder, beginner, because they cannot find jobs as the job was opened for anyone. And actually, even a profession like a car driver is now endangered. You know why? Because we have incoming intelligent cars coming soon. And in the States itself, it's more or less estimated that 3 million of jobs will disappear over the next 5 to 10 years. And there will be no car drivers needed. So another profession which since Tom Ford, back in more than 100 years ago, looked like something like safe and secure, disappears. How about IT? Do you remember GFC, Global Financial Crisis, 2008, 2009? How many people? Oh, most of you. Awesome. It's an old, experienced group here. How about September 11? Have you been as a developer, professionally working? Oh, that's okay. Maybe 10 hands. And how about .com bubble? Okay. So guys, those who survived this time, you may remember that actually a year, 2 years, 3 years after this point, there were no jobs. There were no jobs on the market. In 2000, 2001, people were graduating from Technical University of Technology or uni with the best degrees, and they had some shitty companies to work in or nothing. It was before European Union. In 2008 even, most of the companies for a year or two were not hiring in 2008, 2009. So now, for last 7 years or 8 years, we've been lucky. We haven't really experienced any biggest crisis. But what guarantee do we have that it won't happen? I would say that we have guarantee that it will happen. The question is when and how big. In the States, actually, the situation was so bad that in 2005, one of the frustrated guys wrote this book, My Job Went to India, and suggested that it's time to reassess ourselves as devs and start to keep up in sync with the new technologies coming. I mean, he was talking about COBOL developers or Clipper or Fox Pro guys or maybe Pascal folks who needed at that time master C++ or that was 2005, so Java, .NET and so on. And market themselves as devs who really know shit, right? The stuff. I would say that in 2017, today, it's not enough, such approach. Because, let's face it, ability to code becomes like the really commodity. This is something like literacy became a commodity when the global education system was introduced. So a few centuries ago, if one could write and read, it was a super awesome skill. And they were they were teachers, tutors, scribes, whatever. They had saved life. They were protected by kings, by dukes, and so on. Nowadays, when kids are taught in primary school coding, like my daughter, 10 years old, started 3 years ago using Scratch. I didn't teach her. It was a program introduced by Samsung, Akademia Kodowania, Code Academy. It was global to Poland, right? Kids are doing great games in Scratch. Then Scratch. Second thing, like she knows codes in Python. 10 years old girl, right? And her colleagues are doing the same. Once they graduate, they will like treat coding, scripts, maybe not designing complex systems, but coding basically as something natural as for us is reading or writing. And of course, if someone after 3 months of course can be a programmer, well, it's a commodity. And that's normal. The world doesn't like vacuum, and it immediately fill out any vacuum. So nowadays we are really, really passionate about technologies, and we are really excited. We concentrate about Java, Scala, Hibernate, Akka, Angular maybe, or maybe React, and great new frameworks, especially JavaScript, coming almost every day, and we are obsessed about it. And I find it really funny that if a person quits a job because they would like to, for example, they dream about working in Hibernate, and this is the reason, or whatever technology, they would like to work in Java, and this is the reason why they find a new job. All these things are tools. All the technologies listed here and anything we are sometimes obsessed about as developers are just tools to achieve some mean. And if we focus too much, if we are obsessed too much about the tools, we are creating from ourselves a low-qualified craftsman, a worker, labor worker, let's say like a bricklayer. Bricklayer was taught by his master to lay bricks. He wants it. I mean, he knows it. He's excited about bricks. He knows how to cut them, how to assemble them in buildings, and he's great. He can build a house like this. It's awesome, and he's obsessed with bricks. So if he's asked to build a bridge, he will also build a bridge from brick, right? Like Java. If we are asked to build, a web application, we'll use Java. If we are asked to do mobile applications, we'll Delvik. Again, Java, because we know Java. And then if a person is asked to build a chimney, they will use Java again. Maybe that becomes not that optimal. How about if they are asked to build a sport hall? Well, then bricks don't support that much high distances of their ceiling. And then we can face situations like there is a pillar in the middle of the pitch, for instance, just to work around some limitations of technology. How about building a yacht or a ship from brick? Then becomes really handy. I haven't faced yet such a yacht. How about an aircraft, right? So again, being obsessed about technology and using it blindly leads us to some totally disastrous consequences. And to prove that this is really commodity, I copied and pasted an email I got about a year ago from one of the Eastern outsourcing companies from like east to Poland. And they are selling their resources. As you can see, it's whole team, 6 people with 1 senior, 3 mids, and 2 juniors for $12 in total per hour. Like let's say it's even per person. It's per person. Let's say it's per person. I can have a HTML coder, CEO specialist. I mean, really, I was missing this, add to cart button. I wanted to really add them to cart. And in fact, it's really this race to the bottom. Who offers less? It's focused on the price. It's focused on how cheaply you can sell these resources. So, what to do to stop this race to the bottom? Because it's inevitable. As a CEO, I'm bombed every week with several emails like that. And sometimes it's really crazy. So we have to provide far more than just the code or even just the technology. And technology it is now a commodity and like a literacy since about 100 years ago, it's implied. Everyone takes for granted that we can solve this problem given the fact we understand what we want to solve. This is the problem. So really what we are facing here is this thing where technology is important, but more important is really this product-oriented thinking and really trying to understand what are the real problems a given user, customer, or industry has, and coming up with the real solution to this problem. And technology doesn't matter at all to this person or organization which has this problem. And that's somewhat contrary to what we have been taught, especially at the university, because we have been taught know-how is super important. Know-how, you have to know how to code, how to debug, how to write unit tests and so on. Sure, that's important, but it's not the most important. The most important is to know where to apply this technology. Right? Technology by itself doesn't mean anything. A few years ago, one of the most famous speakers from TED Talks, Simon Sinek, introduced something called Golden Circle, where he focuses that really what matters the most is why. It's why we pursue something, why we want to solve something, why we are addressing this. This is the most important, whereas what we exactly and how we would like to solve it is less important. And whereas why and how in most of the companies are a sphere, an area where business people thrive, as devs, we often put ourselves in this outside circle and we are happy there. We are happy there, we don't feel like tempted into going inside, because usually what we say, these stupid business people, we don't care what they ask us for and why. It's better just to concentrate on technology. And honestly, I'm an IT guy, I've been playing a CEO role, but I still consider myself to be an IT guy given the fact of 33 years of experience with coding. And I'm CEO just for like a couple of years. So I still consider myself an IT guy. And I find it really irritating that I hear so many times, even here at the conference, that people talk to each other and say, oh, I've been recently playing with some technology. Playing even. Like if you think about a business owner who has to, make some compromises, decide where to put some money, where to invest, what to cut, what to kill, what to shut down sometimes. And if they think that the people play, it's not the best language for, between these people. So, as developers, we really should to try this inner circle and become partners for our business. And what a big picture really means. And this is about really understanding the big picture. So do you know where this photo was taken? No? Kraków Airport. This is Kraków Airport. And your reaction is right, but it should be like this. Immediately we should start thinking, if we were thinking about big picture, if we wanted to think about why, we should ask ourselves, well, probably there are, some people accepted this, so it cannot be just a stupid mistake. Especially people from Poland who know that in Poland it's not normal. So immediately we would have to ask ourselves why. And if you left this room, you would notice that it's a family toilet for a kid and for a parent. And this is something, this is a special trick with the perspective, but this is a smaller and lower toilet bowl, right? And this is something which developed countries offer for parents to be able to care with kids. And we as developers often laugh at various solutions we see in the code without understanding why and why they were implemented and what real problems they were addressing. And that's really this kind of thinking. So to sum up the situation with the talent and skills. In Poland and the area, we have great hunger of a lot of companies to hire here developers, testers, QAs, project managers, system admins, telemarketers. But other roles, more why-oriented roles, are not that common in Poland. If you look at the LinkedIn ads or pracuj.pl, you won't find a lot of advertisements for these roles here. They are in the West, they are in the States, they are in Australia, maybe in Scandinavian countries. And as a company who have been, hiring a lot in last 6-7 years. Like last year, we processed about 3,000 applicants for these positions as well, on the left and on the right. I can tell you really that in Poland, there is really, you can use maybe 1 or 2 hands to count people qualified in these positions which I listed on the left. And it turns out that basically, yeah, even if a company sounds awesome, they have a big R&D center. In fact, there is a colony, really. People are working and playing with new technologies, and they don't even understand and don't care what they build and why, this and not that. So in fact, this concentration on technology made us like in matrix cocoons, and we are powering organizations which know why, and we turned ourselves into batteries. You know probably this from one movie. So the question is, are we really doomed, or can we do anything about it? And I believe we can, and that's this talk is about. So many years ago, we were considering our profession as programmers. And nowadays, I think that programmers became a disservice to call someone a programmer, because it's like almost a coder. We consider ourselves as software engineers, so we really can solve, not just program, but we can really solve problems. We can, communicate with different people in our team, with project manager and so on. We are professional. We have processes, continuous integration, releases, deployment, and so on. But the next really step is product thinking, product mindset, and product engineering, where the product, I'm not talking here about something which is packaged and offered, but it's something which is a full solution to some concrete problem. I mean, a successful product is it could be a physical, electronic product, subscription, or delivered one time, but it's something. It's not a code. It's a holistic experience, a holistic solution to a problem given customer or organization has. And product, to develop this product, one actually needs to fully understand this context of the customer or a person. So looking at the Wikipedia definition of the product engineering, you can see, and I'm putting the bold font, that except for normal things which we already know, like reliability, performance, quality, producibility, costs, and so on, so we are all taught about it, a key thing is to make sure that the product is really attractive to its intended market and successfully contributes to the business of the organization which wants to offer this, right? So now we have things like business, which like market, and I just wonder who of us have been taught business or market during our IT course at the university? One hand? Really? I mean, yeah, 5 hands. So yes, we have been taught know-how, not really business thinking or market-oriented thinking. If we look again at various spheres of software development and what we together are excelling at, we all can do as developers these things, right? But product engineering is far bigger. It's about market, it's about usability, experience, pricing, it's about rollouts, adoption, building market awareness, advocacy, engaging customers, all this stuff. So this is software engineering, and this is product engineering, so way, way bigger. Product engineers have to make tough calls and make tough decisions in order to be really considered as partners by business. So as we, as developers, will be obsessed just by technology and by playing with it and building new things, we will never be considered as a partners to the discussion, because it's obvious for more experienced person that majority of companies will sooner or later regret from building anything if they could buy something ready, right? Even if it just requires an integration or customizations, almost all the time, building something from scratch is way worse than buying something or integrating with something or acquiring even a company. And as devs, for us, it's the worst possible thing. I mean, 15 years ago, I was really depressed when my boss told me, Wojtek, we are like they're really throwing away, disposing this prototype. It was awesome, but we'll buy some ready solution for this GIS project. I was really depressed, and after 10 or 15 years, I understand that guy was right. I wanted to play with new technologies. I wanted to build GIS algorithms, play with OpenGL and so on. Whereas in fact, I had to integrate with instead with some shitty API, which didn't give me, this CV or resume building and fun at work. So these tough decisions, what to kill, what to keep, what to challenge, and validate always and do not assume anything. These are the things product engineers have to do. An important thing is that product engineers are not artists. So often as developers, we consider ourselves as like artists. Like we are crafting an art, and even I sometimes see on LinkedIn like the code poems or code poetry as our own profession. And in fact, I would like to challenge that, because artists don't care about the audience. If you look actually at the current art, it's quite sure. I mean, it's for me obvious that artists don't care about the audience because, well, this art sometimes just blows. But actually, sometimes artists become successful when they die, even before the masterpiece sees the life of the day. And really, this is like an artist doesn't need to fix anything. And actually, the day a masterpiece is born, this is the end of the creation. And software is just the contrary. Software becomes the better, the faster, and the earlier it will show the day of the light. So the sooner the customer will see it, and the end user will start to be irritated with it and actually use it, then the sooner there is a chance that software will be great. And also, great masterpieces by artists are born when artists are really emotionally devoted to their masterpiece. So, if a painter was really emotionally attached to their painting, it was a chance that this was an awesome masterpiece. Sometimes a painting needed 3 months or 6 months even for drawing or painting. Whereas with software, product engineer actually should be as detached emotionally from the creation as possible, because only if you are detached emotionally, you can accept critic feedback and actually see, oh, I sucked. I mean, it sucked what I did. I did not understand the requirements. I did not understand how users use it. I just, I'm learning the domain. And the sooner we realize it, the sooner we accept this fact, the better for our masterpiece. So product engineers strive at this most critical feedback loop, which is market, customer, and end user feedback loop. Not unit tests, not compilation logs, not continuous integration with integration tests or health checks, or even an automatic notification about the exceptions in the productions. Ultimately, the most important thing is to verify by really having a feedback loop with an end user or end customer whether the solution we provided actually solve the problem we wanted to solve. And the key, of course, is iteration. And even the world was, created in 6 iterations, and the 7th was, day off. So if God needed 6 iterations to build the world, well, it's obvious that everyone needs it, right? And the important thing is also that this is impossible to master everything by them. I mean, one person cannot master everything alone. And being a product engineer really requires to be part of the interdisciplinary team. It requires us engineers being able to talk to people with different hats, people who are not coders, who are maybe sometimes, business people. They could be marketers, they could be maybe artists responsible for look and feel, or for graphic design. They could be strategists who are thinking really for us. We call them Excel people, and in fact they are really making, they tying the ends of the business so that it can work together. And really being able to get rid of lingo, dev lingo, we have this, our jargon, our language, and being able to talk their language, which requires usually understanding the domain we operate in. So for instance, if you are a developer in a bank, I don't believe you can be a great product engineer unless you understand how banking works and really what product does, how transactions work, risks and so on, policies, compliances and so on. When I worked for an airline for several years, I saw how much I became better when I had a few courses, trainings about the aviation. And actually I understood the rules of the aviation, takeoff performance, physics, organizations and so on, which manage the traffic of the aircraft. So this together requires very strong communication skills in order to be great in this team game. As engineers, we often have this problem, and that's our drawback. We immediately, before even we are asked the question, we immediately jump into conclusions and into solutions. So we specialize into solutions, not in questions, not in problems. And actually, that's a problem, because if we jump too quickly into a solution, we usually will miss the problem. We will not understand properly the problem. And one of the techniques we can use is asking multiple whys. So why we are building it. So you probably heard about 5 whys, this approach. Let's say if we were to apply 5 whys on Uber, right, the taxi-like application. So or maybe let's pick SpaceX. Another thing I'm sure everyone knows about rockets now being launched by SpaceX. So they want to what they build, and if you are an engineer responsible for some software system on a rocket, what you would hear, what you normally hear would be, okay, we want to, let's say, build now a flat drone ship, which will be a landing pod on the sea for reusable rockets, right? This is what. Now you will ask why. Well, because we'd like to build rockets which land in safe place, in any place in the world, so that we can be mobile and sell this solution to any country, maybe. But why? Because we want to really have a cheap launches and safety costs. So if we can put it in some offshore, that will be cheaper, of course. And why would we like to have it cheaper? Because we would like to frequently and cheaply send commercial stuff to the space. And maybe people, right? So cosmic or space touristic. But why? Why? Because we want to maybe go to Mars and colonize it before the Earth, collapses because of pollution or maybe nuclear war or something. And now another why, maybe speculative, but maybe it's quite inspirational to workers, people, and so on. But in fact, if you look where Mars is, there is something called asteroids belt near Mars. And these asteroids are quite great thing to be there, because 2 years ago, one of such asteroids actually passed Earth 2 million kilometers away, somewhat far away, and the platinum there was worth $5 trillion. So if you look at this, then, why sounds different? And you may be looking at the problem from a different perspective. Let me skip this. Okay, so product engineering for a typical engineer is about leaving their comfort zone. It's really making sure that we can enter uncharted territories. We can start talking to people we don't normally understand, or even we consider as aliens, like people who speak different language, who we laugh at, or we consider them as them and not us. And it's about making constant compromises, some tough compromises about these main 4, I would say 4 sides of the equation, and I put it quality here as well, because sometimes we have to compromise on the quality to achieve maybe sometimes deadline, or make it business, feasible in the business perspective. So sometimes we have to actually, as mature product engineers, say, okay, we are not TDD this, for example, because it's too early. We would like to now, as quickly as possible, validate the prototype, let's end users face it, and only then we'll know whether actually we'll be building the right thing, because test coverage of not right thing is useless. It's even the biggest waste. If we have 100% test coverage for something which is not necessary at all, not used at all by end users, doesn't make sense. So part of the living comfort zone is actually feeling unsure, feeling insecure. And Mario Andretti, who was a car driver from 60s to 90s, who won basically practically every type of the car race, from NASCAR, Formula 1, Daytona, Indy 500. he coined this quotation that really, if everything seems under control, so we feel comfortable and safe, we are in control, then we are not going fast enough. Others will go faster. And some time ago, in Ed Catmull's book called Creativity Incorporated, Ed was a co-founder of Pixar and CEO at the time where Steve Jobs was also investing in Pixar, the Toy Story and all these movies. And he actually had this situation where his top engineers were really disgruntled, were about to leave the company because they felt that we are really having, too big technical debt, we are flying too fast. And actually this was it was on purpose. It was because having some lack of security, lack of order is super necessary to be faster than the competition and to grow as quickly as possible. So from the couple of last minutes, I think I already convinced you that product engineering is quite hard because especially for us engineers, it requires us to leave our comfort zone and start doing things which we are not maybe that great at doing. There were a few books which helped me to some degree to try change my own mindset. Some of them are related to startups, some of them are related to communication. Usually people ask me to recommend some books. I highly recommend all of them. And they push you in the shoes of your customer or your end user and make you focus not on technology, but make you focus first on the problems and really understanding, talking to the organization or the individual user to really distill the real problem. And sometimes what people are saying is not what you really should be doing. The real problem is often elsewhere, and the initial requirements are completely useless because they try to solve the problem which wasn't the root cause. And only if you understand the root cause, you can solve the real problem. So let's go back and ask ourselves, as we here, Poland or Central Eastern Europe, are we worse in comparison to Silicon Valley, for instance? Sorry. So sure, they are richer, but do they have, is the problem with better companies there, or more investors, or rich parents who allow young people to dream about startups and fail multiple times, and they still are have something to eat, or it's about maybe greater coverage, or more persistence really. And I think that a few cases show it's a mix of that. So if you look at this story of Wirtualna Polska, one of the first internet companies in Poland, which was sold to Orange about 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So money originally made on selling WPL are now here. It's one of the biggest business centers in Gdańsk, like with the highest skyscraper office building in northern Poland. And the person who made this money did not decide to reinvest anything in IT. Actually, the money, millions of zlotys, were reinvested into secure business. If we consider, face it with some different guy who made first 22 million on yellow pages in internet, then built PayPal, 120 I think it was exit, and then built a few more companies. I think you know who am I talking about, Elon Musk. So this guy was reinvesting into, again, IT companies. There is one great thing about such situation, which we don't have usually, because who knows what happened with money from Nasza Klasa, for example. I don't know. I'm not aware about any new startup which can benefit from money and knowledge of the person who was originally behind Nasza Klasa or other companies which were sold. So this guy, Elon, and a lot of different entrepreneurs in the States, by reinvesting their money, they become advisors of the new generations, and they help people to become product-oriented, to have this mindset of product engineer and actually solve real problems. Whereas in our case, even if someone is successful, they usually dream about quick and safe retirement and some safe oasis when money can be kept. If it's a bank account, cool. If it's 1% on a bank account, maybe it's a real estate, right? But there is no continuity. So to sum up, a few takeaways. Like in Matrix, you can take blue pill and be happy. You can still work, be paid very well. There is huge demand today for IT developers, software developers. You can live happily on the plantation. It's up to you. It's great, I think. And that's really convenient as well, because our lizard brain, which we have, basically forces us to hide somewhere around the stone, usually in a big corporation, and we can happily survive there, for 5, 10, or 15 years. And we will make from ourselves this kind of bricklayer person, so a mason. We'll be great craftsmen, obsessed with the technology, and we'll just, lay bricks. Or we can take a red pill and realize that our skills are sooner or later a commodity, total commodity, and we have to look for a different level of value we can provide as professionals. And we can strive to become more valuable to our organizations and to our customers. And I think that product engineering is something which prepares us for that. Those who still don't believe me, let me show you this pyramid of related to building, for example, highways in Poland. Because, we are great in building highways for the last 10 years. We have built the greatest number of highways in Europe. So there is, on top of each investment, there is an investment group. They participate in the bidding. There is a construction company, or a few big construction companies, and there are those guys who, possess an excavator, or they have, shovels, and they dig the stuff. And that's great. This is actually knowing why we are something, building it, preparing all the regulation, like answering all the regulatory problems, taking a risk, understanding the requirements, and so on. And if we look at the profits, it's just exactly the opposite. So these guys take 99% of the share, this guy will take 1%, and this guy will take 0.1%. Remember that technology is not the goal, it's just a mean. And I think that a big thing which we were pushed to learn and focus on was know-how, whereas it should be know why. I would say know why is far more important. So what we can do as people who would like to maybe do some first steps into this direction. So a few things I think are worth considering. So first of all, please do your best to expose yourself to direct customers or end users. Try to partner with business people, demand it actually. If your company looks like a place where there is no career path into business for a software developer or IT professional, that's a bad sign. If devs can only code and testers can only test and PMs can only PM, that's also a bad sign. Maybe if your company has a center of gravity where all decisions are made somewhere abroad, it's usually also most probably either you will relocate there or there is no chance you can practice product engineering in the company you're currently in. So definitely various signs of a place may help you. Remember, similarly to dinosaurs or lizards who are now protected by law because they are so weak and they were outnumbered by people. Unless you can fight with your own lizard brain, which means you can force yourself to escape this comfort zone, which your brain always pushes you into, you will be sooner or later irrelevant. Similarly to lawyers, those lawyers who still consider themselves to be people who represent someone at the court, they are basically now the lowest paid lawyers. Those lawyers who can provide holistic services, whole solutions to companies, which are not just about representing in a court, but really interpret law, spot some trends, set up the whole business, find the investors, find the contractors who can execute it, prepare timelines and so on. Those companies who can do it are the lawyers which can earn a lot. Similarly to sport trainers. Those trainers who concentrate on, jumping or playing tennis, just doing that, they are sooner or later end up in primary schools as physical exercises teachers, or they do, in some bad club in the nights, they work days and nights in some club. Those trainers who now realize that sports is not about just exercise, it's about the whole lifestyle. They can help you with diet, with life, like the whole personal calendar, personal development, some plans, some goals, and so on. These guys earn money nowadays, and those guys who realize it already can benefit from that. So remember, to finish, that now, while still there is the demand for us, a company needs us, as developers, it's a good time to demand to be part of this circle, to actually tell your company, hey, I would like to be part of the business. I'd like to be a product engineer, not a software engineer only. If there is another crisis and people are being unemployed, there will be a bad time. So take this chance right now. So together, I think that if we change our mindset and we'll be more oriented on the customers and users and products, and we'll be brave enough to reinvest the money we'll make here on the IT, I think that as a region, Poland and Central Eastern Europe countries may together escape this situation where we are just a plantation. Thank you. It's already time, we run out of time, but I will happily take a few questions and then I'm available here. Are there any questions? There is one further in the back. Is there?
Hey, I really liked your presentation. I have one question because I have some kind of observation that usually when I start a new project with my colleagues, I find out that every one of them is truly engaged in the product. But imagine that you are working in some hierarchy and you are dependent on this business development team and you try to give them hints and to create the product together. But sometimes during the development of the product, they make some decisions without including the development team in this decision process. And you get some kind of split brain while product development. I think that you encourage these situations in your life, so maybe you have some insights how to deal with it and how to help this symbiosis.
Okay, so that's a great question, and actually, like 15 years ago, I was in this very situation where we had a business team in a different country which was preparing the specs for us, and we were just, implementing them. And even one day they went farther and they started even specifying not just, screens and flows, but even algorithms with UML blocks and so on. So I felt really like a sugarcane picker, harvester. And what we did then actually took us about 2 years of the working on people interactions. We consistently were collaborating with them, trying to, we're really persistent, pushing the borders, trying to first of all become, I would say, colleagues, real colleagues. So talk the same language, understand there is behind some name and some email and some phone number, there is a real person with some dreams, some ambitions. So we actually told them that, hey, for us it's really interested. We are interested in participating in everything because, and we explained it why. And it turned out actually that they also wanted to benefit from us being their partners, because it turned out, for example, that they were really frustrated with the need of asking us for any tiniest change, or even say of the message of the system in the UI or some simple configuration. So our trick was that we taught them how to do it without us. So actually we taught them, at that time it was like how to use CVS even to check out the source code, these files only, so they knew that they can touch TXT files or MSG files with messages, and they felt like, okay, we are giving them space, we are not protective about our say job security, and instead we asked them, okay guys, so now share with us some data, let us fix something, stop devising algorithms, let's talk about problems, let's have a training together, let's meet customers together. And in our case it took 2 years, and firing 1 person out of 7 I was working with, and the outcome was transitioning with the same people on development side. We transitioned from the worst project ever in the company to the best ever project, the most successful financially, a project which CEO was putting on the on the stage as, guys, this is how I want everyone to work together. And it was a long process. It required overcoming these personal barriers, and we basically tried to give them something and then expect something. And we were the first to give, so we started by giving. So that was how it worked in practice for me. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So I have to give a chance for another speaker. So I will be somewhere in the corridor if you want to catch me. I'm there. Thank you again.